Okay. So language arts is grammar and language mechanics. That's one area. So that's your, parts of speech, punctuation, verb conjugation, all of that's in there. So that's one aspect. The second one goes into the reading comprehension, which is sort of like what we did in social studies, making sure that we understand a passage, we understand parts of the passage, we understand how things are organized, and we build on those skills. And then the final part is writing. So for class, what we're going to do, we're going to focus the first part of our session on the language mechanics and reading. And we're going to save writing more towards the end of our session down the road, towards the end of summer, whenever we get to it. But I want to focus on the grammar mechanics and reading comprehension to help build our skills. So when it comes time to write, we're not having any issues there. It's also sort of a separate part of the GED exam under language arts. Like you'll have a big section on reading and grammar mechanics. It's all together, and then you have an extended response where you get 45 minutes where you have to write. That's a separate part. So we're going to focus on that and really drill down into that later on in the course. So today, to get things started, we are going to work with context clues and affixes. So for one, I know that a number of our students are not native English speakers. And English is a notoriously hard language to learn, as what I've been told. I've spoken for 47 years, so and I still have trouble with myself. But there's just, we have a million words for the same thing, and just rules that we break all the time, and it gets kind of confusing. And this lesson will help us with our vocabulary. And for our native English speakers, when it comes time to sitting down and taking your test, you're not going to have access to a dictionary. You're not going to be able to look up a word if you run into something that you are not familiar with. And there always comes a time when there are words that we are not familiar with. So we have, a strategy through context clues and through looking at affixes of figuring out what that word means. And at least giving ourselves a good idea. So if we see it in a passage or we see it in a question, we know, how to go about answering it. So what I want to start with today is, sort of getting into that idea of affixes. And then we'll get into looking at context clues, and we'll jump over to essential and we'll look at the lesson there. So have you guys ever seen one of those crazy spelling bees? They actually have, I think there's always a big one, and I think it's probably already passed. It's in the spring. So it's a script spelling bee, right? And there's kids, I think they're grade school age, maybe like early middle school. And, they give them a word. And the first thing that child does, they ask for a sentence, right? And then they ask for the origin of that word and a definition, right? So those kids study dictionaries. They know a ton of words, but there's still, even in that case, words that they do not know. And that's why they ask for a definition. That's why they ask for, like country of origin or the origin of the word, because that will give them those clues they need to spell it. So what we're doing is very similar to that in understanding what those words are. So starting with roots and affixes. So an affix is a something, an element that you add to a word to change the definition. You change the meaning of the word to a root word. Prefixes come before a word or come at the beginning of the word, and a suffix comes at the end. And I'm going to post this when I get around to Google Classroom. This will be on Google Classroom as a cheat sheet you guys can review. So just like it says here in the definition, a word part, right? So it's going to just be 3 or 4 letters at max at the beginning of a root that, like it says here, contributes to the meaning of a word or modifies it or changes it. Okay. The root, right? That is the main part of the word that is being modified. It typically has a basic meaning. As it says here, most of those root words that we add prefixes and suffixes to come from Latin or Greek. And then a suffix comes at the end of a word. Same thing. It modifies that root word, changes its meaning, or adds to it. A lot of times a suffix will not necessarily change the entire meaning of the word. Prefixes tend to do that more so. And so this word equation, I don't know if it's all that helpful, right? So it's just letting you know, prefix is the beginning, suffix is at the end. And either way, as it says here underneath, you don't need to have both. Either one, a prefix at the beginning or a suffix at the end, is going to modify the word. So like it says here, you could combine a prefix with a root or a suffix. And sometimes you do have a prefix at the beginning and a suffix at the end. So common prefixes and what they do, right? You're going to see these more, probably familiar with most of these, right? So for example, anti or anti, right? Simply defined as against. So example there, anti-war, right? I'm against war. So there's anti-war movements. There's been, the Vietnam era, there was a huge anti-war movement against the Vietnam War. One that's very popular for various reasons today is a moniker, Antifa, that we hear a lot about, which is supposed to be anti-fascist, right? That's the short form of anti-fascism. D, which they have here, is defined as opposite. I would expand that a little bit. Yes, it can be opposite, but it usually means in the opposite direction. The example they give here is like devalue, right? So you think about inflation today. Our dollar is devalued, right? It means it's worth less. It has less spending power than it did maybe a couple of years ago. I ascend a staircase, meaning I climb up a set of stairs. I descend, meaning I move down. So you can see, right, it's moving in an opposite direction. Incline, right, and decline. So opposites. Dis, also sort of an opposite or opposed to, or I'm sorry, not or opposite of, discover. So if you're covering something, right, you're shrouding it. And if I discover, it means I'm removing that shroud. So we think about discovery, right? If something is hidden and we discover it, we've removed the shroud and found what's underneath. For, right, in front of, foreshadow, forearm, right? That's the front of your arm, the first part of your arm. What's another one? Foretell, right? It means you're telling, or you're sort of fortune telling. That means you're thinking about it before it actually happens. Enter, between and among, interstate, probably the most common that we see. Our interstate system, meaning that it goes from state to state, right? It travels across, or between, or among. Why does Hawaii have interstates? I don't know, because they do not go anywhere else except Hawaii. But our interstate system, if we're on 70 or whatever, is going to go to the next state. Intergalactic, right? You're traveling between galaxies. So that's an idea there, among or between. Mid, just like it states, middle, right? Midfield. Anytime you see that, mid drift, right? So that's like my torso, the middle of my body. Miss, meaning in error or wrongly. So misspelled, misread, miscalculated. meaning that I've done something incorrectly. Pre, also sort of like for, is before. If you preview something, right, at the beginning of a movie, you see previews that happen before the movie. You're looking at trailers for movies that are upcoming. Pre-workout that I take in the morning before I go to the gym, which is a dose of caffeine that would kill a horse. You know, I take that before the workout, so I feel stronger and probably going to die. But anyway, you know, that's always put in front of before. To do again, rewrite, reread. And then is the opposite. If something is usual, the opposite of that's going to be unusual. If you do something, you have a button in Word and in other programs where you can undo, right? So that takes away. There's one other one that I like to talk about that we run into a lot. I'm going to try to use where's my whiteboard? Where's my whiteboard? Well, I'm just going to try this here. I'm going to write on my screen. And I'm left-handed. I'm using my right hand. So we'll see how this goes. So, yeah, there we go. Mal. Whoop. Okay. Okay, which means bad. Okay. Bad or poor, evil sometimes. So Dilda's going to make fun of me. And then there's Ben or Benny or Benna. Okay, really struggling. So that is, I'm not sure if it'd be any better if I use my left hand. Okay, so Mal, malevolent, right? If you know, the malevolent king typically means evil, bad, aggressive, malcontent. Sometimes we'll talk about protesters being malcontents, right? Because they're not happy with the situation. And whereas Benny, if you're benevolent, if you're a benevolent king, that means you're a good king. You're, you know, maybe, you know, generous and things like that. Benefit, right? If you have a job and you got a good benefit package, you know, package, insurance, stuff like that. That's all good things. You see it in medicine. So somebody has a tumor and they do a biopsy, right? You want it to be benign, right? Because that means it's not going to harm you. If it's malignant, that's cancer, right? So you can see there, Mal and Benny, and you will see those two a lot, and they're, you know, direct opposites of each other. So Mal means bad in whatever form you see it, and Ben or Benny will be good. So go ahead and clear that. And I wanted to actually clear it. Should, yeah, clear all drawings. There we go. Okay. And then moving on, roots. The problem with this little list here is that, you know, like I said, any Latin or Greek, well, not any Latin or Greek word, but so many of them can be changed. So they give you some here as far as roots that could be used with suffix and prefixes. But I want to really focus on the suffix and prefix part of it, because that's what's going to modify and change a word, no matter what it is. But here's a short example of words that you may see. And yes, they come from Latin and Greek a lot of the times. So the suffixes, which we're going to put at the end of a word to change the meaning and modify it. So able or able is or can be. So affordable, right? That means that it is affordable. Sensible means that it makes sense. Al or eal. So, you know, having characteristics. If something is universal. Facial, meaning of the face, right? Having characteristics of the face. Palatial, right? The palatial estate of Jeff Bezos or whoever it may be, right? of a palace, having the characteristics of a palace, meaning it's huge, meaning it's, grand. So that suffix, adds in that way. Full, right? So you're full of. Helpful, graceful, shameful, always, to the extent of, making it the fullest. And then ick, right? Having characteristics of. So poetic, characteristic, right? Having the characteristic of. I see it also ends that way. What else? I'm trying to think of another good one. Systematic, having characteristics of a system. And then ION, TION, ATION, or TION. I don't know why they have TION on there twice. It's the same thing. So the act or process, motion, relation, addition, submission, right? It's all about in action in a process. ITY or TY is the state of. So activity, society, piety, if you are a pious person acting piously, piety being, religious, is another one. Less, right, is the exact opposite of full. So that is meaning without. Hopeless, bottomless, relentless, limitless, right? Lacking limits, limitless, relentless, lacking relent. And then MENT, the state of being or act of. So contentment, containment, right? If you're containing something, that's a state of containment. And then NESS, right, is a state or condition of. So openness, graciousness, blindness, right? That's a state of being blind. And the final one here, OUS, EOUS, or IOUS. Again, having the qualities of. So sort of like I see. But it, kind of depends on the word, whether you're going to use use that bottom, or you'd use I see. So riotous, courageous, gracious is the same thing. Having the characteristics or quality of, having characteristics of grace, having characteristics of courage, having a riotous, if you were at a protest and it was riotous, riotous having the characteristics of being a riot. So I will post those, and that's going to be a good cheat sheet. So when you run into those prefixes and suffixes, that's one way to help you identify a word if you don't know the meaning. If you are just reading and you're not taking your test, if you're doing, if you're studying or you're doing a quiz or something, well, except for maybe when we're actually doing these types of quizzes, but I encourage you to actually look up words. If you're reading, obviously on your laptop or your phone or something like that, you can just pull up a Google browser, and get a definition. I taught some at Ohio University, and it drove me crazy how many college students didn't know words. And we would assign, some document that they had to read, and I'd always challenge them. We would come across some crazy word, and I'd be like, what does axiomatic mean? And they'd all look at me dumbfounded. And I'd be like, you actually read this on a computer where you could simply Google the word, and you failed to do so. So, always think about, hey, if I don't know a word, your first solution is look it up. I do that. I do it all the time. Secondly, which we're working on today, understanding the prefix and understanding the suffix, or what we're going to turn to now, context clues. So how is it used within that sentence, and what kind of tips and what kind of hints can I get from the structure of that sentence that'll tell me about the word? So look for that on Google Classroom. And I'm going to start with a small Paxton lesson, and we'll move over to Essential Ed. Unit 2, I think is what I'm looking for here for context clues. No, it's in Unit 1. I am sorry. So Unit 1. less than 13. All right, we're going to have a little audio to listen to again. And then we'll look at what they have here as far as information.
Context clues can help you figure out the meanings of unfamiliar words as you read.
By the way, can everybody hear that? Okay. Yeah, okay.
Context means the text that surrounds a word. Context clues, therefore, are hints in the surrounding text. These hints may be synonyms or restatements of the word. They may be details that define the word or explain how it is used. In addition to clues, writers often use words that have connotations, or meanings that go beyond their definitions. Connotations may be positive or negative. For example, assertive has positive connotations, but aggressive has negative ones. Combining context clues with your prior knowledge of vocabulary can help you determine the meaning of a word or phrase, and thus help you grasp the overall idea of a passage.
Yeah, so the other thing that this is related to that we're going to talk about some down the road is style and tone. And what they said there, right, is a really good example. Assertive has a positive connotation. If somebody is assertive, it depends on the context a little bit, but typically that can be seen as a positive trait. Somebody asserting themselves. Aggressive, though, which has a very similar meaning, has a negative connotation to it. Being assertive, might get you a promotion. Being aggressive, right, might be seen as a poor trait. If you're overly assertive, then you might be too aggressive. So, and again, we will talk about style and tone down the road. So let's take a look here at what they're offering. So as I mentioned in social studies, next week, I'm going to get you guys reading some, get you involved in this. Today and tomorrow, since we're just kind of breaking ground here, I'm going to read the passage. Please follow along, pay attention, and then we'll answer some questions here at the end. So even though this is not related to what we did in social studies, even though we're not talking about main ideas, always take note of the title. So we have Simon Wheeler's story, and we have a brief passage here. So it says, Simon Wheeler backed me into a corner and blockaded me there with his chair, and then sat me down and reeled off the monotonous narrative which follows this paragraph. He never smiled, he never frowned, he never changed his voice from the gentle flowing key to which he tuned the initial sentence. He never betrayed the slightest suspicion of enthusiasm. But all through the interminable narrative, there ran a vein of impressive earnestness and sincerity, which showed me plainly that, so far from his imagining there was anything ridiculous or funny about his story, he regarded it as a really important matter and admired its two heroes as men of transcendent genius and finesse. To me, the spectacle of a man drifting serenely along through such a queer yarn without ever smiling was exquisitely absurd. And that's a piece from The Celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County by Mark Twain. But what's important here, we're looking at the underlined part. So in text box A, it says the second sentence provides context clues for the word monotonous. By describing the way in which Simon Wheeler tells his story, he never smiles, frowns, or changes his voice, right? So if you're unfamiliar with that word monotonous, what the heck? Where can I find some context around that word? He says, then sat me down and reeled off the monotonous narrative. Never smiled, never frowned, never changed his voice from the gentle flowing key to which he tuned the initial sentence. He never betrayed the slightest suspicion of enthusiasm, right? So that's speaking monotonously, without emotion, without passion. And then our next part here, queer yarn without ever smiling. So of course, Mark Twain, this is a fictional piece, storytelling. You'll often have more descriptive passages, right? You'll use more descriptive words and more flourishing adverbs and adjectives in fictional work. So it says that the words "without ever smiling" at the end of the paragraph emphasizes that Simon Wheeler tells his story without emotion or emphasis, right? So it's drawing back again to the idea of monotony and being monotonous. So never. To me, the spectacle of a man drifting serenely along through such a queer yarn without ever smiling. So he's telling this really interesting story. It might be humorous, but he's doing so in a very flat, emotionless way. All right. And that's your context clues for monotonous. All right. And let's see, what do we have here? Okay, so another audio here. Let's take a listen.
The quiz that follows this lesson contains fill-in-the-blank items. To answer fill-in-the-blank items, you will need to read the question carefully and then type your answer in the space provided. Let's practice with an item from the lesson quiz. To answer this question, we must first read the passage. How Barry's Ford got its name. The hamlet of Barry's Ford is situated in a sort of high valley among the mountains. Below it, the hills lie in moveless curves like a petrified ocean. Above it, they rise in green cresting waves which never break. It is Barry's Ford because at one time the Barry family was the most important in the place, and Ford because just at the beginning of the hamlet, the little turbulent Barry River is fordable. There is, however, now a rude bridge across the river. After reading that passage, we must pick out context clues that indicate what a hamlet is. The context clues indicate that it is a place in which the Barry family was important and that it is located in a valley beside a part of the Barry River that is fordable.
Okay, I'm going to stop there because we're going to answer that within the quiz here. So I don't want to give away any answers. I want to pull this quiz up. Okay. Yeah, and just to repeat here. So Simon Wheeler backed me into a corner and blockaded me there with his chair, and then sat me down and reeled off. Oh, wait, what are we doing? Okay, yeah. So we're going back to that one. Monotonous narrative, which follows this paragraph. He never smiled. He never frowned. So that's back to the Mark Twain passage. We're going to take a look at the other one here as well. But so we have our note here. So prior knowledge, in addition to context clues, may help you here. Knowing that the prefix, right? So looking at our affixes for the word, mono means one or single, can lead you to the meaning of monotonous. And also we have the suffix, right? So over here, OUS means having the quality of. So we already got two clues through the affix there. So mono meaning singular, one, and having the characteristics of. So that middle there is a form of tone, that TON. So let's see. Jessica, could you answer our question here?
Would it be V?
So C. So right, so the narrator, yeah, he's saying the Simon Wheeler reeled off the monotonous narrative, and it's asking us here. So the connotation of the terms reeled off, right, instead of the neutral word told, and monotonous instead of the neutral word steady. If he had said told you know, in a steady narrative, right? If you use those words, told the story in a steady narrative, it changes the suggestion there. So reeled off in a monotonous way is telling us that it was boring and expressionless. So C, right? That it lacked, like I said, monotonous, lacks emotion. So let's see. Okay, and here's our small passage again. So the hamlet of Barry's Ford is situated in a sort of high valley among the mountains. Below in the hills lie in moveless curves like a petrified ocean. Above it, they rise in green cresting waves, which never break. It is Barry's Ford because at one time the Barry family was the most important in the place, and Ford because just at the beginning of the hamlet, the little turbulent Barry River is fordable. There is, however, now a rude bridge across the river. So let's see. Nautica. What, in context of the passage, what is a hamlet? Small settlement or an uninhabited space?
I think it is an uninhabitable space.
So it's like a small settlement or a village. So if you look, what we're looking for context, right? It is Barry's Ford because at one time the Barry family was the most important in the place. So right there, we can see, okay, there must be more than one house, right? There's more than one residency there. Yeah. So then, because just of the hamlet, little turbulent Barry River. So yeah, in that case, it's we'll type in here a small settlement. That word still used some. We'll see it from the time, like they'll use it in place of like a little town or something like that, the hamlet of whatever. So every once in a while we might catch that in the modern world. But I mentioned this in social studies too, right? A lot of the passages that we read, it was written 100 years ago, some of them 200 years ago. So, the way they write, of course, some of the words that they use are just don't use that much anymore. So context might actually, be important, even if the typical definition of a word, because it might be used in some old-fashioned way. So same passage here. Nilda, narrator uses the word fordable to describe part of the Barry River. So fordable means that the river is what? Nilda's gone. Nilda's not going to answer because she's not here. That happens from time to time. All right. Levon, would you like to try that one?
I'll try it. I'm sorry.
What does fordable mean?
Doable. It could be done.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And what we're working with here is whatever kind of connects with your brain, right? So you can understand the word in the context. So yeah, it means that the river's crossable, right? That you can get across it at that point. So let's see, what's that say? So that means that the river can be crossed. That's probably what I was looking for. Yeah, like a ford in the river means it's a shallow place. When armies used to fight in you had a lot of foot soldiers and horses. They would look for places where they could cross a river at a ford. And, you know, that's until, you know, really modern history, when we have bridges and stuff, that's what you would look for to cross a road, or I mean, cross a river. Yeah, so fordable, you can cross it. It can be crossed. All right, and another little passage here for the last two, I'm going to assume. Yeah. So from Araby by James Joyce, another older passage. And read along with me. So I held a florin tightly in my hand as I strode down Buckingham Street towards the station. The sight of the streets thronged with buyers recalled to me the purpose of my journey. I took my seat in a third-class carriage of a deserted train. After an intolerable delay, the train moved out of the station slowly. It crept onward among ruinous houses and over the twinkling river. At Westland Row Station, a crowd of people pressed to the carriage doors, but the porters moved them back, saying that it was a special train for the bazaar. I remained alone in the bare carriage. In a few minutes, the train drew up beside an improvised wooden platform. I passed out onto the road and saw by the lighted dial of a clock that it was 10 minutes to 10. Okay, so the narrator describes the train carriage as deserted. What might you find in a deserted room? Mariama, would you like to try that one?
Yes. I think it means there was no one in the room.
Yeah, good job. So
It was empty.
exactly. So you just say there was nothing, or it was empty. So yeah, deserted. You know, when we think of a desert, it's a barren plain. You know, not many people live there. It's usually dry. There's not a lot of vegetation, right? And then anything that is deserted by nature tends to be barren, tends to, you know, not have anything in it. So it's the same idea, same root. Instead of deserted, if it was DESSERT, then it would be full of like baked goods, but that would be completely different. So deserted, right? Nothing in there, barren, lacking. And then our last same passage. Let's see. Let's try Jessica again. So when the narrator says that he passed out onto the road, what does he mean by that? Passed out onto the road.
Like he fainted?
What was that?
Like he fainted?
No. Yeah, in the modern sense. See, this is another one of those kind of old school phrases. But, you know, when he see, where does he say that? Find the context here.
Yeah, that's about what he passed out. The last sentence.
Okay. I passed out onto the road and saw by the lighted dial of a clock that was 10 minutes to light. So the sentence before that gives you a clue. In a few minutes, the train drew up beside an improvised wooden platform. I passed out onto the road. So it means that he moved out onto the road. And yeah, perfect example. You would not hear that in modern language, right? We would never say, you know, I passed out onto, I left Target and passed out onto the sidewalk, right? Everybody, like you said, would think that I, fell out onto the ground. But again, we were going to encounter this a lot with these old passages, things that we just, terms and phrases that we don't use in the same context today that they would then. And this is a good example of that. So passing out just means, stepped out onto the road off the train. Yeah, so that was the quiz. We're going to move over to essential now. Now, I know some of you were not in social studies earlier, and I know some of you have also come in here over the last few minutes. So with this, our plan is basically going to work through a lesson on whatever the subject of the day is. And then when we get to essential, I am going to play our lesson, and then last 10 to 15 minutes of class will give you guys an opportunity to work through the lesson on your own, meaning the quiz that comes at the end. I don't want to give you guys much homework. If you work on this on your own, that's fine. And I know some of you have already completed a lot of the lessons. So at the end, if you finish the lesson, you're more than welcome to leave. If you have any questions, I will be here to answer them for you until we finish class. But before we get to that point, we're going to move into the lesson here. So word attack skills. This is everything that we just did, considering roots and affixes, right? So roots, prefixes, suffixes, and context clues. So we'll listen to the lesson here.
Hey there. This is the lesson on word attack skills. This lesson will help you determine the meaning of words and passages using affixes, roots, and context clues. Recently, my friend Bastian came to me for some advice. His daughter, Evelyn, had asked him for help with her biology homework. Unfortunately, Bastian couldn't understand his daughter's reading assignment. I had a feeling that I knew what the problem was, so I had Bastian read it out loud for me from Evelyn's textbook. Sure enough, he would stop whenever he came to an unfamiliar word. Bastian's native language is French. He doesn't know as many English words as a native speaker. The problem wasn't that Bastian was a poor reader. The problem was that he was missing a few important skills. He didn't know how to deal with unfamiliar words. Most people think of reading as a single skill. You either know how or you don't. Really, though, reading involves a whole bunch of skills, all working together. This lesson focuses on a group of reading skills called word attack skills. Word attack skills help you read and understand words that are new to you. I'm talking about words you've never seen before. These skills help you both understand the reading and read with greater fluency. Fluent readers use word attack skills to figure out words or how well they read. They hesitate less. When a fluent reader reads aloud, they don't even sound like they're reading. Their voice sounds more natural, like someone talking to a friend or a coworker. Word attack skills allow you to break a word into 3 parts. There's the root, that's the base of the word. Then there's the prefix and suffix. They come before and after the root. These 3 parts work together to give a word its meaning. For example, think of the root safe. The word safe describes something that is free from danger. Adding the suffix "ly" changes the word into an adverb. An adverb is a word that describes an action. So, the word safely describes an action that is free from danger. If you add the prefix "un," it's kind of like putting the word "not" before the word. So the word unsafely describes an action that is not free from danger. Even if you don't know a word, you can guess its meaning based on its parts. That assumes that you know the prefix, root, and suffix used in the word. Word attack skills also include using context clues. Context clues help you figure out what a word means based on other nearby words. Take a look at these sentences here. There are 2 kinds of affixes, prefixes, and suffixes. Prefixes come before the root. Suffixes come after the root. Now, let's say you didn't know the word affixes. Based on the other nearby words, you can infer the meaning of affixes. Prefixes and suffixes are both different kinds of affixes. The other nearby words give you enough context to guess what the unfamiliar word might mean. We've got a lot of stuff to cover. You ready to get started?
There's something to think about when it comes to context clues, this whole word attack skill. That's how we've learned most of our language. When we were children, when we were learning to talk, we learned the definition of words. We learned those words. We learned our grammar skills from association. So this is just kind of applying that in a more sort of academic way, and looking for those things. And this is a good point here too. For narrators and people that read, even me, when I'm reading to you guys, and I used to joke, if you encounter a word that you don't only not know the definition, you don't know how to pronounce it, just say it with confidence, whatever it is, and people will just assume that you know what you're talking about. If you're trying really hard to pronounce it, figure out what it's saying instead of just sort of flowing over it, you start having trouble. But that will also help you with context as well.
Let's talk some more about affixes, starting with prefixes. A prefix, as you may remember, appears before the root of a word. The four most common prefixes in the English language are dis, in, re, and un. Three of these prefixes, when added to a word, make the word into its opposite. For example, adding the prefix dis to the root word appear creates the word disappear. The word disappear is the opposite of appear. Some prefixes will have different meanings in different contexts. The prefix in, for example, can mean into, like in the word inside, or the prefix in can mean not, like in the word indecision. Keep in mind not every affix will work with every root. You probably won't hear someone say they're happy. People might know what you mean, but no one really talks that way. You're more likely to hear someone say they are unhappy. Most roots, however, will fit with a number of prefixes. Take the word used, for example. If you want to indicate that something was used more than once, you might say that it was reused. Or if something was not used, you might use the prefixes un or dis to create the words unused or disused. A lot of these rules are based on the conventions of English. They are something you pick up as you read and listen to the words of native English. Suffixes work a little differently than prefixes. Usually, adding a prefix to a word won't change the spelling of the root. That's less true of suffixes. You'll notice that roots ending in y will often replace the y with the letter I before adding the suffix. If you add the suffix ed to the root word try, for example, it becomes tried. Roots also might drop a silent e or double an ending consonant before adding a suffix. Don't worry, you don't need to learn the rules on how suffixes change the spelling of a root. For now, it's just something to be aware of. Here are 9 common suffixes in English. Let's try adding the suffix able to the word use. Notice how the word use has a silent e? This is a situation where I drop the silent e before adding a suffix. So I drop the e and add able to create the word usable. Keep in mind that adding a suffix to a root might change the word's part of speech. Adding the suffix "ly" to a word, for example, changes the word into an adverb, a word that describes.
I just want to point out here, don't worry too much about the spelling. What he is conveying here is what the root word is. So if you see usable, U-S-A-B-L-E, you know that the root word is use, U-S-E. So, don't start getting stressed about, we got a spelling lesson here. It's more about understanding what the root word is.
Describes a verb. Again, you don't need to learn this yet, but it's something to be aware of. I've added a list of prefixes and suffixes to the resources section. You'll want to refer to it as you move through the lesson. For now, let's check your learning.
Yeah, so and just to point that out, right, we worked with monotonous in that quiz. So the root word is tone, T-O-N-E. So there's another example there where we drop that silent E at the end of tone and make it monotonous. It does change the pronunciation a little bit as well, but that root word is still tone.
Look at the highlighted word in sentence 11. Ignore the root for now. The prefix and suffix of the word tells you that.
Okay, so we don't necessarily need to read the whole passage here. We are working with Sentence 11. So looking at the highlight word, ignore the root for now. The prefix and suffix of the word tells you that. So looking at sentence 11, I want to pick on somebody here in a minute after we read it. Read the whole sentence. That'll help with giving you some context. All of your containers must fit in one quart size resealable bag. Okay, so the word is resealable. What is the prefix and suffix? What is, that's what we're dealing with. What's the prefix and suffix there? And what do they mean? So let's see. Mariama, would you like to try that one?
Yes.
Resealable.
I think it's C.
The word describes something that can be used more than once. Yeah, good job. So right? We've talked about that, doing something more than once. Rewrite, reread.
Great job. The prefix re means again. The suffix able means having the quality of. Without even looking at the root word, the prefix and suffix tell you that this word describes something that can be used more than once.
Okay, yeah, good job. And let's see, we're gonna have another one here.
Whenever I come across a word I don't know, I usually start by asking myself, what is the root of this word? The root, after all, is the core of a word's meaning. Without the root, the prefix and suffix would have nothing to change. Take the word uncluttered, for example. The root of the word is clutter. If I know the word clutter, I just need to look at how the affixes change the word's meaning. The prefix un means not, and the suffix ed means in the past. So the word uncluttered means something that is not cluttered. Do you see how knowing the root helps me understand the word?
So they are about ed, right, ed. It is a suffix. Often it's used to change the tense of a word, right? So of course I don't like he decided to go to college, right? So that means that happened in the past. He, that decision came in the past. So anytime you add ed or ed to the end of the word, most likely it means that it's changing the tense from present or future to past tense.
Another one. Only this time, I'm going to slow down and take it step by step. I'll try the word reassurance. The question I'm trying to answer is, what is the root of this word? My first step is to identify the prefix. It looks like the prefix here is re. Next, I identify the suffix. Here it is. It uses the suffix ance. Moving on to step 3, I remove the affixes. Once I remove the affixes, the root is the only thing left. That leaves me with a partial word. The root dropped a silent E when it added the suffix. That brings me to step 4. Restore the root's original spelling. If I return the silent E, the root now spells assure. That's my root, assure. Sometimes you'll find a root, and it won't be something you recognize as a word, and that's okay. Let me show you what I mean. I'll try to find the root of the word ambulance. Step 1. Identify the prefix. I don't see a prefix that begins with am, so I'm going to assume that this word doesn't have a prefix. Moving on to step 2. I spot the suffix ance. Step 3. I remove the one affix I found. That leaves me with the root amble. Step 4. I can't really tell if the root spelling has been changed. The root amble isn't a standalone word that I recognize. It's still the root of ambulance, but it isn't a word in modern English. Sometimes roots are words, sometimes they aren't. The root ambule, in case you're interested, is related to the modern word amble, which means to walk. Well, that's the basics of how to find a root. Remember, words won't always have prefixes or suffixes. Some have one, some have more than one. Others have none. Once you find the root, it may or may not be something that you recognize as a word. Some words are borrowed from another language or are holdovers from earlier forms of English. That's okay. The root still lends meaning to the word, even if it isn't something you can recognize as a word by itself. So what do you say? Are you ready to find a root?
Yep. So yeah, that's the tricky part. Sometimes those roots don't actually have a complete word that it makes. So like that amble, you may also, try to think of other words that may sound similar, that might have a similar definition. So like ambulance, ambulate is another type of movement, like walking, things like that.
Look at the highlighted word in sentence 7.
That's a good one.
What is the root of this word?
All right, so our passage here, looking at sentence 7, right? So, however, it may be harder to get through security. So, that one might be pretty easy. Kate, are you there? Can you answer this one for us? It's okay here. Was Kate here?
It's not showing number 7.
Oh, sentence 7. So yeah, however, maybe harder to get through security. So let's see. I think let's see who else we have here. Yeah, Kate, you're here, right? Can you answer that? D. Let's see. Yeah, secure, right? So here, that's another example where we've removed the silent E and added ITE. So like that's the state of. So secure, root word.
Great job. The root of security is secure. The root lost its silent E when it added the suffix "it." You knew to add it back as part of step 4. Well done.
All right. And our final little question here before we actually get to the 8 or so questions for the quiz.
Sometimes you can learn a lot about an unfamiliar word just by using context clues. The words you do know can help you figure out the ones you don't. Say I'm reading this sentence here, and I don't know the word species. Even if I don't know what the word means, there's still a lot of stuff that I do know. I know that these species, whatever they are, live in the pond. It says the pond is home to many species. I also know that the idea of a species has something to do with animals. The text says species of animals, so I may not know what the word means yet, but I'm off to a good start. So, now that I've given some thought about what I know, I look for signal words. Signal words are kind of like signs. They tell me to keep an eye out for a context clue. See, here's a signal word right here, including. This signal word tells me to keep an eye out for examples. That's the first type of context clue I want to talk about, an examples clue. The sentence says, the pond is home to many species of animals, including fish, snails, and frogs. Do you see how the word including comes right before the list of animals? That's how a signal word works. The word including is introducing an examples clue. So, based on these examples of species, I have a better idea of what species might mean. There are 4 types of context clues that I look for. They are examples, comparing, contrasting, and definition. Each context clue has its own signal words. For the context clue I just talked about, the examples clue, the signal words are including, such as, and for example. This sentence uses the signal word including. The signal words as, is as, or are could tell you to keep an eye out for a comparing clue. Here, take a look at this sentence. Mike is as nimble as an acrobat. Now let's say I don't know the word nimble. There are a couple of signal words here. They're both signal words for a comparison clue. I may not know what nimble means, but I do know that it's something that describes an acrobat. So the comparison tells me that the word nimble must mean something like graceful. The opposite of a comparing clue is a contrasting clue. The contrasting clue uses the signal words however, than, but, yet, on the other hand, or in contrast. A contrasting clue shows how two things are not alike. Here's another sentence. My neighbor's flowers grew abundantly. My flowers, however, never grew at all. The signal word however tells you to look for a contrasting clue. In this sentence, grew abundantly contrasts with the phrase never grew. The contrasting clue tells me that abundantly means the opposite of never. Last but not least is the definition clue. A definition clue is when the text gives you the meaning of the word with or without using signal words. Look here. Allison prepared for her public debut, her first time performing on stage. So here's the word debut, followed by a comma, then the definition clue. Allison's debut is her first time performing on stage. A definition clue might even appear before the word is defining, like in these sentences here. Tonight will be Allison's first time performing on stage. That's right. Tonight is her public debut. The definition comes in one sentence, and the word it is defining comes in another sentence. Sometimes a definition will use the signal word is, like in the sentence, a debut is the first time that someone performs in public. So, what do you say? Do you want to give context clues a try?
All right. And let's see, I just want to point out here that there's also resources sometimes, not always, but that's pretty much the same list. I might post that one later too. That's actually in the quiz there to help you, or in the essential ed lesson. So we got about 9.
In sentence 3, what type of context clue helps you understand the word carry on?
Mute him. Yeah, so I'll answer this one really quick because I hope to give you guys a little more time to actually do the quiz at the end. But we'll go ahead and wrap up, and I'll try to get out of here a few minutes early, and then you guys can finish up. If you have any questions on it, we can kind of cover those tomorrow. So what he's asking here, right, is what type of context clues are we getting for the word carry on? In sentence 4, it says, however, you'll need to plan and pack your carry-on baggage as well. That means you'll also need to know some travel requirements beforehand. It can be cheaper and easier to travel with just a carry-on bag, a small bag that you can take on the plane with you. All right, so I'll just throw that out to all of you guys. What type of context clue are they offering us here? Is that a contrasting clue? Is it a comparing clue? No context at all, or is it a definition clue? Anybody have an answer for that? So it can be cheaper and easier to travel with just a carry-on bag, a small bag that you can take on the plane with you. So that's
clue.
So it's a definition clue.
Great job. That's right. A definition clue won't always have a signal word.
Right. So like I said, but what that has I'm going to go back and try to look at that sentence one more time. Let me.
Sometimes you can learn a lot.
Leonard.
In sentence 3.
So, right. It just, at the end there, it says just a carry-on bag. A lot of times it might be split with a comma. So in this case, you get that additional information after the comma. So a small bag that you can take on the plane with you. So like he says in definition context clues, you might not have a signal word like is, like, or some type of opposite, a contrasting word. A lot of times it might be just punctuation. So in this case, it is separated by a comma, and it gives you exactly what that, what a carry-on bag is, right? A small bag that you can take on the plane. So that's
What type of
the
context
end
clue helps
of
you
the
understand
lesson.
the word carry on?
The rest is the quiz, which I, wanted to save some time for you guys. So I'm going to wrap up a few minutes early here, and I'll just let you guys take care of that. In the future, I hope to give you guys some more time. Rachel and I are still kind of working out the kinks for the new program and everything. The other thing that I want to mention, you don't have to watch the whole video again. If you ever want, you can always retake your quizzes and your practice quizzes and things. You can just go to the menu, open it up, and go straight to question 1, and it'll be there. Before we leave, or I'll let you guys work on your quiz. Is there any questions on today on affixes, context clues, language arts, random trivia? You guys good? Don't be afraid to ask questions. Even in the middle of class, you might want to put them, if I'm talking or anything, you can put them in chat, and I'll answer them for you. Please, though, if you have any questions, do not hesitate at all to say something. So anybody have anything?
I still won't be able to take the essential because I didn't get it set up with Rachel earlier.
Okay. All right. I'll text her, and definitely we'll see what we can do about that. We'll try to get it fixed this evening. If not, we'll be able to work on it over the weekend and get you guys set up on Monday. Anybody else have any trouble with Essential? You guys are able to get in the program and everything okay? All right. I want to take that as a yes. All right. Yeah, if that's all, tomorrow, social studies at 12:15, language arts, whenever we, 1:30, 1:40-ish, whenever we finish up. So, and also, if you guys got any more questions during the day, you can text me. You guys have my number now. It's in the text chat. So, just feel free if you have anything you need, okay? So I'll let you guys go work on your quiz, and then we'll meet back here tomorrow at 12. All right? Okay, you guys have a good afternoon.